morning, all. Thank you very much to Infotech, War India, Dr. Deepak, and the organizing team for inviting me. I'm excited to talk about a topic, which is becoming very relevant for all of us, irrespective of the business you are in. So I'll share some of my thoughts, and hopefully, then we can exchange some ideas while I'm here or in the break time. So with this, I'll get started. So currently, I am privileged to lead a company, that is catering to IT systems for leading airports in India as well as overseas. And we have been expanding this technology company into other segments. As part of this expansion, we have been espousing a lot of emerging technologies, both internally as well as for our customers. So one of the technology I think which all of us are aware nowadays is AI, artificial intelligence. I don't even need to describe what it is. Everybody has been hearing about AI, Gen AI, LLMs. So much jargon will be thrown at you in the coming time. It will become difficult to catch all the time, right? So moving forward, you will hear SLMs, you will hear large object models instead of language models. But I won't go into the details of those and bore you, but I want to talk about certain other topics which are being, I feel, overlooked in the industry around the AI. So irrespective of the sector you are from, whether healthcare, manufacturing, information technology, pharmaceutical, law enforcement, hospitality, you are probably either thinking or using AI. Now, couple of challenges that I find, many people are devising a separate AI strategy when I speak to them. What I have learned in my career and professional life, technologies do come in. They are enablers, they are tools. These technologies should be married with your overall business strategy, not other way around. What I see today is companies have business strategy, then they are rushing in to create AI strategy. You should always have a business strategy, which is spanning 1, 3, or 5 years based on how you do it in your companies. Any tool strategy, technology strategy, or use of it needs to fit into that. Your business levers are always going to be the same, which is how do you enhance your revenue? How do you improve your operational excellence, reduce the cost, bring in more processes, automation to do that? How do you enable customer ROE, which is return on experience? Return on experience always leads to an ROI. So these are some of the business levers any business looks at. And then where you look at AI or Gen AI or LLMs, anything that you want to champion, how it fits into enhancing some of my business levers. So I think that's what I would recommend one should look at. As we went through our own internal strategy exercises, we realized that was one way, one very clean and crisp way to look at the things. Now, one problem that I found, I've been dealing with AI technologies for very long and other emerging technologies. I've built some of them. I have deployed some of these. I've learned a lot from the customers, vendors also in the emerging tech around the globe. And one part that gets overlooked is the ethical challenges in AI. This can lead to unfair treatment of people, systems, and it can actually end up creating more problems than solving. I'm all for AI, but at the same time, I want us to be conscious about challenges it poses. And today I'll focus a bit on the ethical portion of the AI. Now, how does it basically happen, the ethical portion of AI? A lot of times we are not even aware what leads to it. I'll take now very specific examples, and hopefully those examples will help you out. In year 2020, during the COVID times, I was in US leading their Verizon's 5G deployment around the globe. So one of the contracts we got was with the stadium, where National Hockey League and National Football League, these are really big stadiums, and you have to devise access control systems so that people are not in close proximity of each other as they enter into stadiums. Separation is maintained, so that there are no communicable disease that are going around. So that is a very simple application which is now pervasive around the globe, these kind of systems where you maintain the distance. But that time during COVID, this was becoming a regulation. So we worked on a technology which basically you have a computer vision camera. As you're walking in, a video is taken that Rishi is walking in. This video is then sent over a high-speed link like 5G to some data center where systems are deployed where a pattern matching algorithm is working. This pattern matching algorithm is nothing but an AI algorithm, which looks at the video that's coming in and sees this is actually Rishi, and Rishi has a pass, basically, to come into the stadium and let him walk in. India is today using something similar, like in Digi Yatra in the airports, right? You go in, you stand in front of the computer vision camera, you have already uploaded your documents, and it says, this is indeed Rishi, let him come in, let him enter. In the back end, you have AI algorithms, pattern matching algorithms, working to validate, verify that this is the person coming in. Now, challenges that I saw. So this is the system that it works. One of the challenges we saw was that predominantly certain races, certain faces, certain skin tones were getting denied entries into the stadiums. So darker shades or brown shades could not enter into the stadiums as often as the Caucasians automatically. And one of the reasons we found was very interesting, that the developers and the testers we had on our team, they were predominantly Caucasian. So the algorithms, the data they took, the data modeling they did, you need to take a lot of data, train your models, and the data you are even sending the testers in front of the cameras to test it out. And unfortunately, our sample data was such that it was predominantly, white faces or Caucasian faces that were getting tested. So algorithm got fine-tuned a lot to the Caucasian faces than to the dark skin or the brown skin. So it was not a deliberate or intentional mistake somebody made. It was actually a very unconscious mistake made as we developed and tested the systems based on the people or the team that was doing it. So it's a subconscious mistake that was made, and that creeps up into a very unfair treatment. Imagine this is happening around you day in, day out. Similar problem was faced, as an example, in the Chicago Police Department, when they were using certain systems to figure out which are the rogue elements in some of the public venues. There are people whom you can identify based on their history, whether they have a history of being a hooligan, being a rogue at some of the public events. You can track them based on what your law of the land allows you to do, how much you can track. And again, it was realized a very unfair treatment was being made to certain parts of the society. This was again a very algorithmic bias, a bias that was generated by an algorithm. Whether you're using supervised, unsupervised learning or neural networks based on the sample set you have used and how you have coded, this can lead into both algorithm bias and the data bias. And this leads to a lot of dissatisfaction. Instead of helping the problem, it ends up creating bigger issues for you. Similarly, besides the algorithm and data bias, you will see privacy and surveillance issues. How much is much? That's a question you got to address. You need to at times track people, track their movements. The question that you always see is, are we tracking people at an aggregate level? In case you want to monitor the queue lengths in the malls, you want to monitor the queue lengths in the airports, in the stadiums. Should we track at an aggregate level, anonymize everybody in the queue, just look at the heat map and not worry about individuals? It solves certain issues. It gives you the density of how the flow is happening, and you can take some corrective actions, send people to help them out. But other times, you cannot track certain rogue elements or criminal elements or people who might be carrying objectionable, some objects with them, which can cause a chaos later on. In some countries you can, other places you cannot go down to that level. So those are again the challenges you find in the privacy and surveillance. Right? So these are some of the debates that you constantly need, how to balance it out. And the good part is, when I look at India right now, some of the compliances and laws which came into the rest of the world, India is now championing it, whether it's a GDPR Parliament passed a bill also some time ago. We might be a little late to the party, but I feel we are doing the right things. We have learned quite a lot from how it's happening in other places. We are second to the party, but I can tell you when I look at some of these regulations that are coming in, they are coming in to protect the citizens also. When we implemented Digi Yatra in Indian airports, we had to convince the people, the travelers who were using it, that their data is not going to be used for anything else. We take the data, goes into a server, government has access to it, private entities like we don't have access to it. We just use the metadata for those of your technologists to basically enable the transaction, and then we delete that completely also. Now, other lesson that I've learned is, while all these things are being put in place, I don't see many people asking these questions. And the reason I bring this up is, there are many people who understand what the user interface or a customer journey of an AI is. I've spoken to many people, they'll describe you how this AI system works. Like I gave you an example of how the AI system that was deployed in a stadium when I was with Verizon, how the AI systems we have deployed here for pattern matching or computer vision. But the people who are deploying it, the companies who are deploying it, the agencies who are deploying it, they are not asking vendors, please describe to me how your algorithm works. Please share with me all the data samples you tested on. That's a question we forget to ask. We should be demanding that, we should be asking that from each other, from OEMs, from vendors, from system implementers, that how does your algorithm work, describe that to me. How does basically your data samples were taken, is it large enough, show it to me. That's one way to cross-check or validate if there has been a very unconscious bias into the systems or in the data testing. So this is something that behooves upon us, and that can eradicate a lot of problems before you even implement any systems. Other issue that is coming up, which you need to mull over, is accountability and transparency. And I'll give you examples on that also. In the coming time, if self-driving cars, say, become a little popular, and nowadays you must be seeing videos, and there are technologies coming around the globe of air taxis, right? And some of them will be unmanned, carrying just 1 or 2 people. If some accident happens, unfortunately, who's responsible? Is it the agency that's running it? Or is it the OEM or the system developers that supplied it? Or is it a consortium of certain of these people who are responsible? Who's responsible? I don't think we have mulled enough over it as an industry and as regulators to think about it. We have been running at a pace, to be honest, where we do not debate a lot of these questions. So I'm just citing some of these examples in front of you, whether algorithmic bias, data bias, accountability, transparency, that who's responsible, how much work are we doing to cross-check with each other. Now, the good part is there are certain things that you can do to basically do a very good check and balance. One, I talked about that as an organization whether you're building the systems or you're deploying the system which somebody else has built, you have to ask very detailed questions, not on the user experience, but into internals of the algorithm, which means you have to go beyond the black box. You have to start demanding questions that how does this algorithm work, how the data was tested, can I supply my own data, which is a lot more diverse. You can actually even use generative AI to create synthetic data set, to increase your data set a lot. So statistics tells you it's a law of large numbers. The bigger your data set, the more diverse your data set, the better it is from the testing perspective. Better it is from the accuracy perspective. So I don't think many organizations ask that question when I look around. This is the training that you need to do within your organizations. I would encourage that. Second, there are many tools available to you today. I'll give you some examples. I encourage you to go look into those tools. You can use those tools onto the AI systems that you're bringing in. See if there are biases already there or not. Examples of some of these tools are IBM's AI Fairness 360 toolkit. It's an open source toolkit, which means you as a user can also go contribute. So you can make recommendations. that, these are the challenges I'm seeing, this is what the recommendation I make. Developers will go enhance it. You start using some of these toolkits. Similarly, Google has released, again, the toolkits for free. Many people have not even explored it. Again, that tells you how some of the AI algorithms and data and some of the other basically variables that are used along it, how diverse they are. Is there a bias or not? You can basically now use technology to basically look at the bias and create little bit of unbiasedness, if you would, besides your own human check of asking and answering a lot of questions which I spoke about earlier. So my request and suggestion, to all the members here who are leading various charters in your companies, just spend a time to think about it. And one way you could solve is you have your own governance boards for a variety of things. You have a business governance board. You might have your own ethics governance boards internally in the company. Why should this not be part of your ethics governance board, the AI ethics? As I said, don't treat AI to be any different than your business strategy, your other governance rules. Make sure it's feeding into your bigger all strategy and governance. From that framework, start asking these questions. Just like you ask other questions in your business practices, this is one question your governance board, your ethics board should always ask. And one way to solve this problem is make sure your governance boards is very diverse. You need now a pool of people from diverse backgrounds coming together. Technologists, policy makers, ethicists, right? And people with the sociology background, different backgrounds who come together, who can now basically start to ask the right questions around the ethics in the AI and the digital. That's how it will start. If you just have the technologists or business people in the governance boards or ethics board of your companies, you are just not going to ask the deep questions. So one suggestion I can make is, just rethink of some of your governance boards in the existing governance boards so that they can ask you a lot of questions around the ethics applicability in the AI and the digital world. And the better questions you ask, the deeper questions you ask, I promise you, you will be on the right path to get those answers and the implementations as well. So with this, I end my talk. My time is also coming to an end. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to address. Okay. Thank you. Any questions, guys? Either I bored you or... yeah, please, go ahead. Mic, please. Huh? Yeah, thank you.
I'm Bohitesh Mishra. My question would be, what would be the kind of frequency to validate all these fairness?
Great point.
Biases can be built the moment testing has been done.
Yes. Very valid. So I can share with you the practice that we are using internally. So there are we have two audit cycles. One is internal audit cycles, other is external. So the external audit cycle, you let it run at the frequency that you're running for your businesses, where all the departments get checked. Make sure that this is part of your external audit cycle. This can be a quarterly or 6 monthly for the external audit cycles. But internal, my recommendation is you need to be a little bit more proactive. Every 6 weeks, at least go in initially, ask these relevant questions. Till you put this, till you make it very frequent, like initially for every 6 weeks, this thing is not going to seep into the DNA. It's not going to internalize in the people. So run these 2 cycles. One you can run every 6 weeks where you're asking the questions even on the systems that already have been implemented. And before you bring in any AI system, make sure you have healthy debates on it, whether it meets all your check criteria or not. Because part of it is your learning process also, as you start asking. And other is your external cycle, which runs at whatever frequency of, once in 6 months, once a quarter. So that is my recommendation. Yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
So, excellent session. So, thank you for that. I would like to know that India is mostly compliance driven. And we do not have any regulatory board for this policy, government policy for AI.
Correct.
So how much do you see that the companies will actually do this proactively before something bad happens?
Correct, correct. Very, very valid point. So I have two answers to it. First, the reason I gave this talk today is because I know this is what we lack in our ecosystem. In the end I was saying there are some people that need to come together, which is policymakers. Policymakers will be both private and public, as well as the people in industry, technologies, business, ethicists, some people from academics. They need to come together to form this board at the government level, if you ask me, right, to drive certain regulations for the citizens. Now, I'm hoping that the private industry organizations, they still take these steps to go deeper into their AI policies and ethics. And the reason for that is, I'm tying up that AI feeds up into your overall business strategy. If you today do not take certain steps, there'll be lawsuits on you. Let's say you're catering, you're into a B2C space, you're offering certain services, and you end up breaching some of these citizens' data, privacy, or you end up giving them a very unfair treatment. And if a citizen or a consumer is able to prove that in the court of law, and especially when Indian companies are now going a lot global, there'll be a lot more lawsuits. So the monetarily, the damage and the bigger damage to the brand is going to be huge. So I think just from that perspective alone, the second, I think organizations ought to do it on their own. But the first one is yet to start a public-private partnership. I feel if the private entities can do enough momentum on their own within their organizations, and then basically hopefully that gives an enough catalyst or impetus to the public, government also, to come together to start to form this. So that could be one way, but I'm sure there are other ways to attack it, but I feel we need both.